I got Ben Vinton on the show today. He is the owner, founder of ISO Alpha Brain Health Supplement. Ben, welcome to the show, brother.
Thanks, Joel. Appreciate it, my man.
Dude, excited to geek out here with you and this supplement, ISO Alpha, that you've been so kind to let me try. And I'm a really big proponent of stuff like this because when I started learning about the studies and everything that it does for not only brain health, but really the big thing that sold me was that it attacks the vagus nerve. Not attacks, I should say. It helps, it stimulates, it triggers the vagus nerve. And I'm a big proponent of that because I've learned so much over the last 10 years of my own holistic health journey, how powerful the vagus nerve is for relaxation, the gut-brain axis. And also as a new fit practitioner who does a lot with electric stim, that's a lot of what we do is stimulating the vagus nerve to help calm the nervous system down. Mm-hmm. But you're doing that with a supplement. So much to get into, dude. Talk to me about just your background, dude, and how you got started with this compound that not many people probably know about.
Yeah, so I'll go like way back to my childhood. So I grew up in a house where my mom was a dietitian and nutritionist. And so I grew up with like kefir, quinoa, things that all children hate. So I grew up kind of health conscious. And as I got older, I got more into like the physical health needs of exercise and started doing a little bit of like fitness modeling. And so I was very aware of my physical health and what affected how I feel physically. And as I start to age, I'm 38 years old. I noticed that I have less energy. It's harder to shed pounds when I need to quickly. And so I started getting into more of like the hormone therapy side of things. Started selling some natural supplements to help with men's testosterone and hormone support. And then really discovered this nootropic ISO Alpha, that there's a scientist out of California who patented this process of extracting isohumulones from hops. And it's a really unique compound that's super powerful for brain health and cognitive function. And like you mentioned, it activates the vagus nerve through the gut. And I thought it was really intriguing. And as I've aged, I've gotten more into natural remedies and just really holistic health. Rather than focusing on my physique and my body, it's more like holistic. How do I feel better on a daily basis? And so I thought this was a really cool product. We encapsulated it, formulated it, and launched it this year. So we're really focusing on getting the word out there and trying to grow the brand because it is a really powerful compound that has a ton of world-class scientific studies behind it as well. So,
yeah, I follow, I follow a lot of this stuff. By the way, funny because like in my 30s, I was like, let me see how much caffeine and coffee I can get because I need more energy. And now in my 40s, at 42, I'm always looking for things to down-regulate me. I'm like, give me more kava, give me some more ISO Alpha, give me some more things to down-regulate my nervous system because I've realized it's just so stressed out and just, burnt out.
Yeah, there's so much stimulation that we receive on a daily basis, right? It's like, if you're doing too much caffeine, you're going to crash for sure. If you're having too much stimulation in your brain, you're just going to crash, and it might feel good temporarily, but everyone's looking for that, longevity these days. I feel like it's less so about that short-term fix, right? So,
yeah. Now, this wasn't your like creation, right? There's a lot of supplement people out there that like they created this, but you had such you had a big background in the supplement industry, but for you, the results were just so uncanny. Like no one was doing this. The research was so profound. And you're like, wait, no one's really capitalizing on this. Talk to me about like just the results you were seeing in your own life and the impetus to say, hey, I'm going to go all in because we need to get this out into the world. People don't even know about it.
Yeah, exactly. So my grandmother actually had Parkinson's and dementia, and she passed away because of the results of that with just rapid cognitive decline to the point where within a year, she was healthy walking, could formulate sentences to not being mobile, put in hospice, and eventually her body failed her. And so that was kind of an awakening to me of like, oh my gosh, like it was traumatic and no one wanted it in the family. And it's kind of like, how do we prevent this for when I get old? Because we're all aging, right? And so how do we prevent that? And ISO Alpha isn't a magic pill. I wouldn't ever claim that it's going to cure these things or even, you're not going to feel these amazing effects. But what's cool about it is the longevity play, right? So for myself, when I take ISO alpha, I have noticed, and I've been taking it for about 3 months. And like you said, I didn't formulate it. I didn't come up with it. This doctor or this scientist out of California came up with the extraction process. And I have personally noticed that my short memory recall is much better, and my mood throughout the day is more even keeled. My highs are still high, but my lows don't go nearly as low. I feel more stable throughout the day with my mood. And yeah, like you mentioned, this doctor, he formulated it. And there's a ton of research out there that people just aren't aware of. You know, everyone correlates hops with beer, right? And so with isoalpha, it's the formulation is isohumulones, which are extracted from hops, but it's so concentrated that you would need to drink about 2 or 3 12 packs of like the most bitter IPA that you could to get the quantity of isohumulones that we have, which is 100 milligrams. So it has all these amazing benefits, and no one is utilizing it in this way. And the research is there. We've identified about 60 medical research and scientists who have looked into isohumulones, isoalphas, matured bitter hops, and all the great benefits there. So like you said, there's a lot to get into, but that's how I came about it.
Yeah, talk about some of those studies or some of the profound ones. I mean, that you list like over 40 of them on the website. But just talk, if someone doesn't know and they're like, this sounds great, Ben, but so talk about some of those studies and what were some of the most profound ones that had a lot of impact on you and that you saw from the clinical research.
Yeah. So the biggest one, and we've touched on it briefly, is just the activation of the vagus nerve. So because hops is the most bitter compound out there, and we talk about bitters, you know, like our parents and the older generation, they're familiar with like taking bitters to help with stomach problems, and there was a lot of medical benefits around bitters itself. Well, hops is literally the most bitter compound that's out there. And so what it does is it goes down into your gut, your vagus nerve regulates everything on the back end that you physically don't have control of, which is like metabolism, inflammation, breathing, heart rate, all these essential nerves and neurons and hormones that your body needs to release and regulate in order to function properly on a daily basis. So the most profound study that we focus on is that vagus nerve activation. This is the only compound that has been proven to activate the vagus nerve, which then stimulates the brain to release 3 key essential hormones, one of which is dopamine, another is irisin, which is the same hormone that's released after you work out. So there's just a lot of really great benefits that this study points to. I would say the second one that's super powerful right now is there's been a lot of talk lately in the media and just in general around, and we talked about it a little bit before, was this coining of type 3 diabetes around Alzheimer's. And one of the big key factors here is insulin resistance. And there's not really a great way of lowering insulin resistance out there. Besides, you know, there's GLP-1 that's meant for pre-diabetic or diabetes, and then there's lowering sugar. But in terms of actually lowering insulin resistance, isohumulones have a lot of studies around them. The fact that they can actually lower insulin resistance is one of the biggest benefits to isohumulones and isoalpha.
Yeah, that's pretty massive, given the fact that we are at an epidemic of, not the pandemic, but I even talked about in my book. I think there was a July 2022 study showing that 97% of the U.S. population is metabolically dysfunctional. They have some type of metabolic dysfunction, which is terrible. So we're talking type 2 diabetes. We're talking weight gain, obesity, inflammation, blood pressure issues, cardiovascular. It all ties in, high cholesterol, all those things. It all ties into the metabolic dysfunction. So chaos. So pretty cool to hear that you're seeing some things in just terms of insulin resistance and how isoalpha can can help with that. That's pretty massive.
Yeah, definitely.
Talk about, a little bit more about that vagus nerve, that
Mhm.
gut brain axis. Obviously, there's so many things we can do: meditation, breathing. These are all positive things, but I've never heard of a supplement that can do that. So if it's doing that, and you're connecting that gut brain axis a little bit better, I'm assuming then again people's mood, motivation, all those things improve. And you also mentioned things like those three powerful chemicals, those neurotransmitters: acetylcholine, norepinephrine, right, and dopamine.
Yep.
Talk about why those are so important in terms of isoalpha being able to help supercharge and release those chemicals.
Yeah. Yeah, so again, that vagus nerve, it runs all the way from our brain down into our gut, and there's a lot of receptors there. And what isoalpha specifically triggers is a hormone in the gut called CCK, which then tells the vagus nerve to signal to the brain to release those three, which is, like you said, acetylcholine, norepinephrine, and dopamine. And those three are really essential to regulating your mood and just your daily activities through memory, short recall, conversational skills, executive function, all these things. And so when I talk about the benefits of isoalpha, it's rather difficult because I don't want it to sound like this magic pill that can solve everyone's problems, and it does all these great things. But there really is so much research around the multiple benefits of it. And what you'll notice is you won't notice an immediate effect, and you don't with your vagus nerve. If anyone is familiar with regulating your vagus nerve in these different activities, like you mentioned, there's different things where you can like stick your face in cold water and hum, and that activates your vagus nerve, or gargle water for 2 minutes, or meditation is a huge thing. And meditation, you can really feel and see those effects. And there are biomarkers, of course, that you can see as well in terms of vagus nerve regulation. But the big thing with isoalpha is after about 60 to 90 days, we have a 90-day money-back guarantee. If you don't notice subtle differences in these things that we've been talking about with mood regulation or memory, recall, clearing brain fog, things like that, some of those symptoms that are more evidenced in adults as we age. If you don't notice a difference in those between 60 to 90 days, you get your money back guaranteed. And it's not an immediate effect, like I mentioned. It's this, as long as you're consistent with it, you're going to start to notice subtle improvements in these things over time. And it's really beneficial. I mean, the thing I always say is, we know that, vitamin C, vitamin D, vitamin E, these are all magnesium, calcium, potassium. These are all things that are essential for your body to operate at peak performance, right? When you take vitamin C, when you take vitamin D, you're not going to feel those immediate effects. But over time, you're going to notice that your health is better, and it's going to, you're going to see that in your sleep quality, in your mood throughout the day. And it's the same thing with isoalpha, where you're going to see these subtle improvements over time. And if we took our brain health as seriously as we did the rest of our body, there's not much out there in terms of actual long-term beneficial nootropics. Caffeine, nicotine, some creatine. These are like three of the biggest products that are studied out there. And they do have neuroprotective effects, but they're not necessarily looking at long-term health. There's a lot of side effects to nicotine. There's too much of any of these things are a bad thing, but with natural compounds, there's always benefits in the middle, right? And so with isoalpha and isohumulones, those benefits are really going to be long-term effects rather than these short-term effects that you might feel with some other nootropics.
Yeah, really interesting. And I'd be curious to know if there's any studies talking about digestion and improvement with the digestion process, because it's all connected. Those bitters, like you mentioned, we know they're extremely important for releasing. We don't get a lot of bitters anymore in our food. And matter of fact, we're so to the point where we want everything sweet, we reject anything that's bitter. It's like, oh, that's disgusting. But that was actually part of our palate back in the day. And these are important for release of bile and all these things, stimulating the gallbladder, the pancreas, and stuff like that. And we're not getting that. And so I'm wondering too, do you know if there's any studies in terms of just like improving digestion over time. This is a polyphenol, and we know these polyphenols like are phytobiotics. They actually feed good bacteria. So I'd be curious to know too if there's anything with digestion that gets improved.
Yeah, absolutely. And you're right on the spot with polyphenols. This is a polyphenol complex. So we know that it helps manage the microbiome in your gut. So uh, again, I don't want to coin isoalpha as this like solve all your problems, but it does help with digestion as well and managing that microbiome in your gut. And you're absolutely right. I mean, our diets today, everyone is so used to either salty or sweet, right? But there's so many other compounds and flavors out there that are good for your gut, and having a diverse microbiome in your gut, which is essential to so many key functions, right? We know that our immune system is part of our digestive system, right? The majority of your immunity comes from your microbiome system, and that gut-brain axis is essential, especially as we age. And you don't realize the importance of it until you start to age, right? I mean, all of us, when you're in your 20s, when you're in your early 30s, you hear about these things, but once you start to experience it yourself, or you see someone in your life, a loved one, a parent, a grandparent, start to have this cognitive decline, I honestly can't think of anything worse for a loved one than seeing them go through cognitive decline. So yes,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah. CCK, it also stimulates CCK. And I believe, if I'm not mistaken, that is actually a big peptide that stimulates neurotransmitters, but it also, I think it helps. There's a lot of studies showing that helps with weight loss and metabolism, I believe.
Yeah, it does. It all works through lowering. I don't know the exact science behind it. I'm not a doctor, right? Disclaimer. But there also are studies that go along with this insulin resistance of lowering body fat percentage through isohumulones. So there really is a lot of benefit to your gut, to your brain, to your physical health. And it's just one piece of a very diverse physical body that we have, right? Everything ties into itself.
Yeah. Talk about also the bioavailability, right? You're mentioning that there's a patent on creating, because we know a lot of probiotics and these prebiotics, they get destroyed by the stomach acid in the digestive process. How do you guys maintain these humulones? How do you maintain them throughout
Yeah.
that digestive process?
Yeah, so the pill itself, or the capsule, is within bovine gel, which is known as one of the best bioavailable capsules that you can have, right? So it's not like a hard pill that might be hard on your digestive system. Isohumulones themselves, I don't know too much about the extraction process there, but through the formulation of our product, there was biomarkers that were taken. They did brain scans after 8 to 12 weeks of um, patients who were taking isoalpha versus patients who were not, and the biomarkers were all there. Segments of the prefrontal cortex were lit up on those who had been taking isohumulones. So we know that it is a bioavailable compound, and the gel capsule itself makes for easy digestion. And one of the key takeaways is with hops, again, it's an extract of hops, but it is very concentrated. So there's other products out there that do utilize hops and the benefits of hops with, like there's a hops water that's awesome, tastes great, has benefits, but you're not going to get the quantity of isohumulones that would actually impact your health in any of these other products unless you're drinking a ton of IPA, which is not that has a lot of bad side effects, right? So I would not recommend that to anyone. But yeah, that's a bit on the bioavailability.
Yeah, very cool. What about kids? I don't. I mean, I know you're not a doctor and you can't say that, but I have kids, and I'm always thinking, man, if I could give them something to help upregulate their prefrontal cortex, we know that children are just living in the limbic brain. They're just constantly in fight or flight. And guess what? Some of us adults are too. But if
Yeah.
I could help engage that just a little bit, it's a polyphenol. It's a freaking polyphenol. It's, like, what's the worst it could do? That's why I look at it. But I mean, just what are your thoughts in general? And again, I know you can't say for sure. I'm just curious. Or have people told you, hey, I actually did this with my kids and this is what I saw?
Yeah. So we do have some customers who are currently giving it to their children to help regulate brain activity, especially around ADHD, ADD, and depression. There are scientific studies out there, especially around the polyphenol complex, with the benefits of polyphenols for ADHD and regulating brain activity. I personally don't have any experience with giving it to my kids. I have 6 kids, all of them ranging from 12 down to 6, and none of them can swallow a pill yet. So once we get to that day, they'll be taking it. But it is, like you said, it's a polyphenol complex, so it's 100% natural. We make sure that there's no allergens in the manufacturing process or the capsule itself. So it is bovine. Everything else about it, non-GMO, no wheat, no fish, no nuts, nothing. So it truly is safe for anyone who can. The only stipulation there is that it is a bovine gel capsule. And I know that there's some people who have a negative effect with any cow product with like Lyme disease, or there's a certain tick bite. So anyways, other than that though, it is safe for anyone, safe for any use. And I know that we talked before about how much you can take. I pop 2 a day sometimes, and there's no negative effects to it. It's just a natural compound. I'm sure if you took enough, you might upset your stomach because it is very, very bitter. But yeah, it is a completely safe compound for any age.
Yeah, I've had a chance to experiment it with the last month or so,
Nice.
and I've taken 1 to 2. I would say empty stomach. I've taken it in the morning. I usually wake up and have a cup of coffee, so I'll
Nice.
take it with that. So it's not a pure. I mean, obviously the caffeine is going to be doing something, but yeah, I haven't had any negative side effects. And one of the things we talked about too is I said, hey, I like to feel things, and you're like, yeah, you probably won't. So don't be like dismayed if you don't feel anything. And that's true. A couple of times when I took the 2 a days, I would feel a little bit calmer, but not like this big like rush where you just feel like super calm. And somebody, again, if they're taking maybe some type of CBD, or I'd say something actually stronger. I've never felt anything with CBD. But something stronger like a psilocybin or something. Maybe if someone's macro dosing or whatever, they might feel something. Whereas this one is a lot more subtle. So anybody that's going to try to take iso alpha, I would definitely say you probably won't feel anything. I'd be curious though if I could even go a little bit higher and see if I notice anything. If I do 3 a day, let's see what happens. I'll let you know.
Yeah, let me know. Keep me posted.
Yeah, keep me posted.
And it's true.
But hey, I wanted to ask you, so on that note, if someone is going to be taking this, what do you think is a good range for them to kind of track their progress during this testing phase for 30 to 60 days if they want to extend out to 90, which is probably the best, where we see a nice little turnover of gut microbiome? And for them, they'll actually be able to, that's a good, I always tell for most people for any supplement, probably going to go for about, 60 to 90 days anyways. What do you think the best way is that people can track that progress?
Yeah. If you've got a spouse, ask your spouse about your mood and patience levels after about 90 days. No, I think journaling for me is huge, right? So anytime I want to track any progress in my life, it's so hard to see progress on a daily basis with health and longevity. And that goes for anything, right? There's a lot of different things you can do out there to benefit your health where, you're not going to feel the immediate effects of it. But as you look back 60 to 90 days, 3 months, 6 months, a year, you're going to really be able to see those step-by-step benefits in your life. And it's no different for iso alpha. I know journaling is huge, being able to document your progress on a daily basis with memory, recall, conversational skills. That's been big. Something my wife takes it as well. And she has she's never been about numbers. She does not like numbers. She's very much a people person, but it was funny. She just got back from a girls' trip. She went down to Texas with some friends, and they needed to remember a code to their locker or something. And it was a 6-digit code. And she came back and she was like, I swear it's the ISO alpha because I've never been able to remember numbers. And I still can remember that number. So it is, journaling is huge, right? With progress in anything you're trying to track on a daily basis, taking a look at yourself introspectively after 60 to 90 days. Those are huge. There are some biomarkers if you're into like blood work and testing and doing that deep dive on your personal health. You can also look at some of the biomarkers, and I'm not as familiar with that side of it, but I'd be happy to follow up with some additional biomarkers that you can track and see the progress on, on a deeper level. So.
Yeah, but off the top of your head, I'm curious, what biomarkers would you think is their top 5? And I'm thinking one could just be your H1AC levels. If you're looking at, insulin sensitivity over a 3-month period, that could be an interesting one. As we were talking about insulin resistance, I'd also be wondering if there is HRSS, or what's that one? SRP, if you're just looking at overall inflammation in the body. And then another one I'd be thinking is, it'd be interesting to see, Ben, if you teamed up with anybody in the neuro space and we're looking at EKGs or something like that, someone who came in and then someone, a month, 3 months later, hey, look, let's look at their brainwave state. Are they a good measurement is if this person's producing, guess what, more alpha brainwaves, iso alpha. And that could be we talked about alpha brainwaves being like the meditative state, beta being more like you're charged and you're stressed. So that would be an interesting follow-up too. And I don't know if you have any connections with anybody. I have a couple, so maybe there's something we could do there and see.
Yeah, I would love that. I would be super curious about that. I know that we do have some testing that has been done, but I would love to take a look at biomarkers. There are some that talk about, just the receptor activation that they've been able to track with alpha and gamma, and insulin resistance. That was one of the big studies where they did track it and they did look at those markers and there was improvement there. So I would love to do like a full analysis and scan to see what all biomarkers are improved by this, because it is such a wide breadth of improvements and benefits you can see. So
yeah. And this is also a neurotropic, it's referred to as a neurotropic. For people that don't know what that is, kind of briefly just tell them that, and how would you stack iso alpha compared to a lot of the other neurotropics on the market?
Yeah. So again, it all goes back to the activation of the vagus nerve, right? And the release of these different hormones that the vagus nerve regulates. And so I would say how it stacks up against some of these other competitors is the longevity play, the neuroprotective play, rather than the short-term benefits that you're going to experience with some of the other stimulated nootropics or neurotropics, whichever you want to refer to, is they're going to have an immediate effect. Isohumulones and the hormones that are released are going to help regulate over time and have a neuroprotective effect on your brain connections, and removing a lot of the plaque in those neuro connections in your brain, which is part of cognitive decline. And the causes for brain fog are those connections in your brain. I like to think of them as like little, the neurons that are connected are like chain links, and they start to rust. And as they've been used and stimulated for so long, as we age, they get rusty and dirty. Polyphenol complexes and isohumulones are known to break up and go in, and through these neuron releases and these hormone releases, break up those plaque buildups in your brain. And that's where you feel the biggest difference with like brain fog and memory improvements.
I didn't know that it actually broke up those plaques.
Yeah, there's a couple studies around breaking up the plaque in your brain, and it's early in its research. I think the most recent finding was from 2019, so it's about 5 years old. But there definitely needs to be more research in that area because it's huge in terms of Alzheimer's prevention and dementia as well.
Yeah, those tau like plaques, right? That we see a huge formulation in Alzheimer's patients specifically, and dementia and that kind of stuff. Wow, I didn't know it did that. Who's doing all this research? Is there anybody now with the, you're really the only one spearheading these isohumoloins. Are there organizations or people out there that are now that you've kind of, I think you're really bringing something. The difficult thing is you're bringing something new to the market. Nobody understands it. There's the why. But now that you've done it, now you got people that say, hey, like there's foundations and others out there that want to actually explore this research even more. Because now you made it available.
Right.
Like we can actually test this,
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. There's been a lot of these medical studies that I quote, and they're all on the website, isoalpha.com. You can go to the medical studies that are listed there. A lot of them are coming out of Japan. I'm not that familiar with anyone here in the US. I know that there's, I'm trying to remember his name. There was one doctor in the early 2000s who we have cited a couple times that did some of the research on isohumolones and compounds. He worked a lot with Dr. Oz. I can't remember. He was pretty mainstream, but he did a lot of the research. And we have like an affiliate program where we work through doctors and nurses and practitioners. And a couple of them have been blown away. Like, why isn't this more mainstream? Why isn't there more research looking into this? And I just think, I don't know, man, you're going to get into my personal biases, but we know that like big pharma is out there, right? And
I'm sorry, I've never heard of them, Ben. Who is this? Are they new?
Exactly. Gonna get a black strike. But it's like everyone's looking for the quick fix, right? Everyone just wants that medication to fix their thyroid issues or depression or whatever it is, the skinny shots, whatever it could be that's short term. And real effects and real change in your life doesn't come from short-term benefits. It comes from finding consistency, regulating practice, and making things habitual on your daily basis. And isohumolones are one of those things that is beneficial, but it does take time and it takes consistency, but there are real benefits. So I don't know why there's not more research around it. There is a lot of, like I said, research coming out of Japan around it, but not so much here in the US. And you can go to the studies, and there's some that are as recent as 2024 in terms of polyphenols, gut-brain axis, some of these research papers and documents that have been published. So that's where I find most of the research being done, though.
Yeah, very cool, man. Yeah, that's cool. Well, we'll have to see if we can find some more people for you to partner up with here in the US and get some, even some anecdotal studies. I think would be really neat if you could partner with some brain scientists or any other physician who'd be interested in kind of running a rigorous trial. It'd be kind of cool.
Yeah, agreed.
Dude, what exciting projects are you working on? What's new, or what can we expect down the pipeline in the next year or so? Are there anything that's exciting you?
Yeah, so I think the biggest thing is I'm super excited about the potential of isoalpha, and we're really just focused on this one complex at the moment. But there is discussion around additional products, specifically around lowering insulin resistance and experimenting and playing with the compound to see what the right formulation and right quantity of isohumolones is to have the greatest impact on lowering insulin resistance. So that is something that I'm working with the scientist on, who's out of California on his researches. This isoalpha is focused on brain health, vagus nerve activation, cognitive health, all those things. I see huge potential in benefiting people's lives through insulin resistance. Like 50% of the population in the US or something like that is is obese, and it's on track to be around 75% in 15 years. I mean, that's that's wild. And we have this huge aging population. And there was an interesting conversation that I was listening to this last week podcast, and they were talking about how essential your health is in midlife to set up your late life for success. And I think that there are so many natural compounds out there, and people are waking up to it, and people are getting more health conscious and avoiding ultra processed foods and these different stimulants that are toxic for us. I'm excited for the next year to see where ISO Alpha can really benefit people, and how many products we can variate with isohumolones to truly benefit the body on a holistic level. So.
Yeah, and I did a podcast recently with a gut expert and how it tied into mental health. And I think, to your point, if we can lower cortisol, which is that major stress hormone, if we can lower that, guess what? That lowers a lot of other things, not only just our overall level and feeling effect of stress, but also things like cortisol and insulin are directly tied. You see insulin go up, cortisol go up, you see insulin go up. So if we can, that it has a tremendous effect downstream. Cortisol goes up, things like testosterone go down, right? So and for women too, it's the same thing with estrogen and progesterone and all those things. They call it the pregnenolone steal. So you start at the top, but at the top is where it starts with cortisol, guys, not with testosterone. Is at the very bottom. That's the end byproduct. And that's where a lot of the physicians right now are starting. Let me just give you testosterone, Joel, because your numbers are low. Why don't we start at the top? And that's exactly what you're doing with your product, which I think is really unique and cool.
Yeah. Thanks, man. Yeah, it's true though. I mean, there's so many different things you can do to benefit your health. And like I said earlier, it's all about consistency, finding what works for you, and then balance, right? I feel like the truth is always somewhere in the middle, and balancing your life with, things you enjoy, but also understanding that too much of anything can be a bad thing, right? So.
Yeah, and like you said, it's not a pill in a bottle. It's not the magic pill. It's part of it's a supplement. You're supplementing it in your life. If you add this on top of lifestyle changes, meditation, all these other things, you're probably going to see profound effects. So it's not just one or nothings, which I love. Man, I want to wrap things up, but anything that I didn't ask you that you wish I had?
Oh man, I can't think of anything, Joel.
Well, if it comes to your mind, let's have you back for round 2 when we get some more research out there. I'd love to follow up with you and see how things are going, man. Awesome. Ben Vinton from ISO Alpha. Guys, go out and check this out. If you want to lower stress, stimulate that vagus nerve, and you don't feel like doing meditation or breath work, it is the vagus nerve in a bottle, which I think is really neat. Ben, thanks for being on the show, brother. Appreciate you, man.